Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Met's Lunar New Year Festival, Year of the Ox. My name is Wayne Ho, and I'm a member of the Advisory Committee in Cultural Engagement at the Met. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce the Masters and Masterpieces, Chinese art from the Florence and Herbert Irving collection virtual exhibition tour. As we celebrate the Year of the Ox, we are highlighting art and traditions from across Asia. Please be sure to visit metmuseum.org to explore more virtual activities celebrating Lunar New Year. The Lunar New Year Festival, Year of the Ox, is made possible in part by Council Member Keith Powers. And now we are proud to present Pengliang Lu, the Associate Curator in Asian Art for a virtual tour of Masters and Masterpieces, Chinese art from the Florence and Herbert Irving collection. This exhibition showcases a group of jade and bamboo work from the 18th century imperial workshop that have never before been on display.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pengliang Lu. I'm Associate Curator of Chinese Decorative Arts at the Department of Asian Art in the Metropolitan Museum. And today I'm very happy to give you a gallery tour of the just installed exhibition, Masters and Masterpieces, Chinese art from the Florence and Herbert Irving collections. As we know, when I always talk to myself or ask myself about who are those masters and what kind of works can we think of as the masterpieces in Chinese art? Sometimes very hard to answer the question. But Irving's collection really gives us a great collection or a great sample of objects, let us to understand how those masters works and how those works can be treated as masterpieces. So first, I will say some words about the couple, the Florence and Herbert Irving. They have started collecting Chinese art since 1970s. After the next three decades, they not just expand their collections and also generously supported the museum. And in 2015 and also in the last several years, they give us all the Chinese and lots of works of art, and there's over 500 Chinese objects. It's really expand our collection, or I would say like transformed our collection of Chinese decorative arts. So this exhibition is kind of like we pay a homage to their generosity and also to their masterful arts. So for this exhibition here, we are in the first room. This first room, I will focus on how the working systems the Chinese artists work in the last, I would say 500 years, something like that, in the history of China. So here you will see three groups of things. The one on the most left, this part, you will see some works we now know is like the imperial wear or official wares. So they're not just the lacquer and also textile, also ceramics. So all of them, they are made for the quarter or for the government. And they're all very delicate. Because we know at that time, the best artists always provide service or working in the imperial workshops. So they have endless sources of materials. They have enough time. They can spend 3 years working on one object like that. And that's why we see a lot of things, they are like just perfectly made, very delicate. And also you will see they are very much like, they have lots of like shared standard motifs, a lot of auspicious motifs, dragon, phoenix, and all kinds of like lucky symbols or like that. But interestingly, you will see, although I'm sure they are all from the master's hands, but we cannot know who made them. Who is the master? Because they did not sign those objects. Usually we will see the mark underneath those objects, but they just talk about the date, the year, the reign name of the dynasty, like the Great Ming Dynasty, made in the Jiaqing period, or like that, but not the individual artist's name. This is the system tell us, like at that time, the artists really devote themselves to the imperial workshop, but they don't leave their name on it. And here, again, you see this set, and from the mid-18th century, those like a double fish, and also the old music instrument chime, this kind of lucky symbols. You also can find on the porcelains as well, double fish, and like the old chime, those kind of old ancient Buddhist auspicious symbols. So this kind of share motif is very common and very typical. You will see the really high quality of the imperial official wares. But on this line, you will see like 5 objects actually reflect a very interesting patronage from the emperor themselves. The emperor themselves always, especially the Yongzheng Qianlong emperor, those mid-18th century Qing emperors, they very much like to put their poems, put their articles, and even their paintings onto those objects. So so I give a title like "As You Wish." This is like from the Chinese word like Louis. Just you wish whatever things you want, you can make it. For example, this is we call the Louis Scepter. It used to be, the origin is like the weapon by a literati, but later it become like a emperor's and the ornament. So you will see this is made from bamboo veneer, and the emperor himself actually put poems, his own poems, on the back of this scepter. And here you will see those like cotton production scenes, the paintings incised onto the jade with the emperor's, his inscription, his poems. Oh, here is a fabulous book and very unusual. Here we see a book, it's like an album, but it's combined 2 different materials. One is a jade plaque on the both sides. The texts are repeat, but on the left side is written with gold pigment, written on the dark color, dyed paper. On the left actually is jade. So they incised the emperor's article into this kind of book. They call it like the jade book. So it's like the jade of Here is another interesting, you see very clear, the long poems, the calligraphy, is the emperor himself. He made this poem, talk about how this jade coming from like the Xinjiang, the area, and he tried to use it to mimic the shape of the ancient Song dynasty's ceramic shape. But basically the Song ceramic shape is coming from the more old past, so the ancient bronze vessels. But if you're looking into details, actually you will see those small crackles on the surface of this jade base. This is more like the subtle crackle glaze on those Song ceramics. So this is another interesting example to see emperor's idea. Here I would see another very rare and unique piece. It's look like a meteorite. It's like some stone coming from the universe. So the emperor say, oh, this is some kind of like the jade coming from where it is. And so you will see the inscription, the poems of the emperors put on that rock. So, but basically we know this type of rock actually is based on a model. It's kind of like a scholar rocks. They from the Taihu Lake have this kind of dented surface. It's because of the water poured over the rock. So this once has been very much appreciated in the 12th, 13th century. And later you will see this kind of pattern has been used on those jade carving. But this intact piece of jade to mimic the literati or just the common rock is very unusual. I would say this is so far the only piece we know from that time period. So after all those imperial workshops won, in this case you will see a group of things. They're not for the court, they're not for the government, but they are from all those private workshops. So different to those imperial one, or official ones. Here you will see those masters sign their piece from their lacquer, very old 14th century lacquer piece. You will see very light incised inscription of the artist's name, Yang Chen, Yang Ma. And also in those bronze one, you will see the Hu Wenming. We know this is from today's Shanghai area, the Yunjian Hu Wenming. Made this set of like incense burner, incense container, and also a bottle for like incense tools. So interesting, you will see those motifs are very different. They have lots of like more lively scene. Here, those green white pots, you see, this is taken from the illustrated woodblock novels. So this we know is from very famous like a Chinese like a novel. It's like a Ring of Rod of their time. So it's all these kind of mythical creature and a tiger and all those like a fairy, all kind of like imaginative scenes you will see used on those portraits. Those scenes we will never see on those imperial ware. And also you will see a lot of calligraphies. Those literati, scholars, they use their own, they sometimes practice art by themselves. So they like inscribe and carve on bamboo, wood, all kind of things. So you will see for those private workshop or for those literary objects, they have more freedom to create all different type of works. And if we're looking back, here we have in the center case, we have very interesting case study of those kind of, we call it like a two-bird, the flowers patterns, especially on lacquer. This is a motif developed from the 13th century to all the way to 15th century, even later. So we see here, we will see not just the private workshop works, and also from the master's hands, and also from imperial workshop one. So here you will see a good comparison to see how different they are. If we're looking at the most right one, this is the one from 13th century. So at that time, the artist, the lacquer artist, try to represent a kind of like three-dimensional effect on a two-dimensional surface. Here we see those pattern, the flying bird is almost like fly over the mid. But when the technique or the skill is more developed, you will see the center one. This one is, we know by the inscription, was very possible by the famous 14th century artist Zhang Chen. So you will see lots of overlay of those flowers and birds. So you can feel how subtle and you can feel the kind of, almost can touch the flower. It's like a soft petal, and also the bird is really flying into that, not just put over that. But if we look at the 15th century one, that's an imperial workshop one from Chenghua, the Yongle period, early 15th century. It's still very delicate, but you will feel a little bit like a strip, like a kind of like a more stiff, the feeling. And of course, in the later, even more delicate and more complicated pattern, even like the full birds here on a little bit lighter ones. So this case study, you will see how the difference between the private workshop and the common piece, and also or some like a master hands one, and also from imperial workshop. Now let's move on to the next room. So in the next two rooms and the two parts of it, we will talk about use like a different categories of the commonly see type of the Chinese workshop to see how those masters, what kind of things make them to be a real masterpieces. Here, let's see that this room is more like those ideas based on the natural world. So as we see natural world, it's not just directly from the natural world, but we always see lots of like abstractions taken from the native, the shape. For example, like in this case, you will see how there's a lotus petal shape. So it's incorporated into those the form of the plate, a dish, or chrysanthemum shaped petal, or the lotus, or the flower. So And also you will see the difference between some is very delicate pattern and some is more simple, straight. But the very important thing have to be have a kind of like balance, make it looks more comfortable, not just too plain or just too tight or too delicate. So it's kind of like a subtle things need to come true. And also in this case, we will see a kind of a typical like a lacquer art, like called a T-sheet. So basically, it's kind of carved lacquer. If you're looking closer, this is like a black lacquer one. But the cross section of the lacquer, the carving grooving to it, you will see multiple layers of layers. So not just the black and also red. So this kind of type of like a marbleized, the cross section give its name like T-sheet, because old Chinese think this is more like think about around the like the rhinoceros skin or something like that to make this type of the T-sheet lacquer. And you will see not just on lacquer, and also you will see they use on the ivory carving, sometimes in silver too. So this is very popular and also wonderful abstraction. Or you need a kind of like a mathematic thinking to make the pattern very delicate and well balanced over the surface. If you're looking at this cup, look at it outside. And also very deep carving. I need to remind you. So those carving is not carved on its body. It's carved on the lacquer applied over its body. So the lacquer need to be applied layers by layers and then carve into it, the lacquer. So make them very, very labor intensive. And of course, think about the plant and those natural things. You will see lots of like flowers, and they always give kind of like a symbolic meaning, and like the plums and the pine tree and the bamboos. They always call the like three friends of winter. So always to show kind of resilience, even in the very harsh winter, they still can blossom. And of course, we will see kind of like a very eye-tricking part, and is those like, I would call it astonishing likeness. Here you see some ceramic, mimic all kind of like fruits and nuts. If you're looking closer, sometimes you can very easily and just grab something, think this is just a nuts, but actually this is a ceramic made and also some jade carving as well. So they really try to like entertain the user or owner. Here we see lots of like flower, like literary scholar objects, the plum trees, the bamboo, and the pine tree. But at last, I would talk about this lacquer piece, inlaid with mother of pearls. Here we see a scene of the plum blossom tree with two birds on. But very interesting, if I would ask you to try to find a hidden, I would say a tricky face over there. If you're looking at that one petal or the flower next to the bird on the right, you will see a face. Actually, a face of a human. It's like you're looking at you, almost like he wrinkled his elbow. It seems not very happy. So where this came from? It's just a fun the artist try to make with the objects, but we know actually there's some 13th century book we call the 梅花洗尘谱. That's a manual of the plum blossom. So we know the artists at that time, the Chinese literati or scholars, very much appreciate the plums. So give it to depict all different type of blossom in different process or stage. So one of them they call the baby's face. It's exactly like this to show how the flower itself, the bud, is like a baby's face. So this is really something fun and make it extinguish, like make it really special and different to a common piece. Here we see a fabulous suture container. Actually, this is used in the altar of the Taoist temple. Here we see a pencil of the Taoist immortals. So this is also, again, I would remind you how to treat this as really masterpiece. Looking at all those details, every figures, look at their face, all different. Some smiling, some looks very stiff, some like seriously, and also their clothes. So this is all carved on lacquers. And this is made under, we know from the imperial archives, we know this is made under the emperor's, his own order. He tried to make such kind of things used for the altar tables, and put a suture, the Chinese suture inside, it's a container. So during the Qianlong period, that's mid-18th century. So it's really, you can see if every piece, every figures, all the details make it really unusual. And here, in the middle of the room, I would say this hair of Jade Boy, I would call it Jade Boy, maybe not it is a Jade Immortals, but I would, again, it tells a story. It's a very fun story. The one on the left, actually not from Irving's collection, it entered the museum collection in 1902 from Bishop. It's another famous collector at that time, and the great collector of Chinese jades. So the one on the left came in the museum in 1902. So after almost 80 years, the Irving, they found another one, the one on the right, in an auction house, and they suddenly realized this is a perfect pair to the Met Swan. So they successfully acquired this piece, and also they generously give us this piece later, and in 2015. So this pair is reunited after over 100 years. It's really a story to tell us how a great artist did not just have the master eyes, also because of their generosity and give to the museum. And finally, we'll see this piece with the museum and can show to the public. This is really a spirit of the collection, a collecting, and also to the collectors. Now we came to the last room of this exhibition. And in this room, our topic is on the reflection of culture. So not just the nature world, and also the cultural platform scenes. The Chinese artists get lots of inspiration from the past, and also from foreign lands or somewhere, because Chinese always love all kinds of things from the old past, remote past, and also something from other countries. It always fascinating to think about Silk Road. All the things go through the trade routes, and from the Central Asia, West Asia, and even Europe, all came to the China. But Chinese artists not just copy them, but they incorporate into their own idea and make something unique for Chinese. So let's see first this group of three, like a tubular shaped or the square shaped vase, kind of we'll call the vase. But the one on the most left is a Neolithic one. It's 4,500 years ago, like over 4,000 years old. But at that time, they are used as a ritual objects. We know from the excavation, they are just a tube. They are not a vase. But in the 12th century, start from I would say 12th century, a lot the antiquarianism and the scholars, they love those ancient the relics. They found those things and they use those ideas, but at the time they don't know this very clearly. But they use idea to make vase. So you will see those beautiful Celadon ceramic stoneware vase, and now they put a bottom underneath it, so make it like a vase, and also bronze one. So you will see not just the copies at ancient one, but it use different material, the ceramics, and the beautiful glaze to apply over to make it this wonderful vase for interior decoration. And of course, the bronze one, if you look in the details, they even add a lot of new patterns, those waves in the center. So make it a better suit for the contemporary life. Also, you will see lots of like the jade, the bronze, and also the rhinoceros horns, and also the cloisonné. And some interesting things is like is just a brick. It's a brick from a 3rd century AD. But in 19th century, people like rework on it, make it become an inkstone. You see those red, they use the cinema to use as like scholar objects, as the inkstones. And here you will see another group. This group is another kind of like a case study. It's talk about like this certain type of dragon. We call it a true dragon. So this kind of feline-like dragons is very interesting combination. So we already see them from the ancient world. So I mean, the Chinese antique time is like the 4th century BC, like that. So, but interestingly, in the Tang Dynasty in the 6th, 8th century, we also see lots of like the import from the Persia, from the Iran. So those kind of the metal, the Central Mid East, the metal also have this kind of feline-shaped dragons. So they incorporated together and become very popular motif after the 12th century. So here we see lots of different type of the jade, ivory carving, and also the lacquer one. And interesting, if you're looking at those details, some dragons normally we know the Chinese dragon or long is kind of like scaly body, like a fish-like body. But those true dragons, sometimes they don't have those scale. And sometimes even here with a lot of like fur on their body. Very different. And also, if you're looking at this small ivory carving, it's even interesting. All different type, like tiger-like dragons, but their face, sometimes even with elephant-like snout. And the phoenix or eagle-like beak. So it really make a lot of like creation. So this is kind of like a perfect scene to see how the things from the Chinese ancient past, and also incorporate lots of like the foreign ideas into together to create lots of new things. And in this case, we call this like something from other lands, it's from the foreign lands. So some from nomadic people, you will see those patterns of the spring hunting, the eagle hunting as a goose, and also in terms of the material, different material. So this kind of cloisonné, we know the cloisonné is start from the Europe. But in the mid-century, in the 14th century, it's gradually like bring into China. But interesting at that time, and I call it Arabic ware because they probably is from the Arabic Muslim merchants and bring them to China. But the Chinese artists create lots of in the imperial workshop, early 15th century. So make them very unusual and very luxury piece. We know those cloisonné, they use those very delicate labor-intensive works to make those patterns. And of course, and also use some all different inlays, gold and silvers over the damascene, over the iron. This is some for the Tibetan Buddhism. And of course, the blue and white and the bronze basin. And the blue and white we know now is very typical Chinese. But at that time, in the 14th century, when it was invented, their thinking is kind of very foreign, exotic taste and not necessarily appreciated by Chinese scholars. But later, it's appreciated by the imperial families. So it became a very typical Chinese idea of the blue and white. Here is what I just mentioned, those swan hunting and the birds, small eagles to hunt the goose. And also you will see on the jade, on the rock crystals as well. So it's a kind of popular motif from the Northeast Asia and those nomadic people. Yeah, as I mentioned, there's a lot of fusion. There's no boundary for the creation of those artworks for a wonderful, or we say a master artist. So here you see lots of like a combination, not just one idea. They have fusion of many ideas just to create something different. So this makes those artists or make those artworks very special. I think here is my talk today, and I hope you will have time to visit this exhibition. And thank you for your attention.